I recently found out that all sushi salmon in Japan is imported, and apparently that's because the type of salmon that grows domestically in Japan can't be eaten raw due to health and safety reasons. So if you're coming to Japan and you want to try out sushi, which I know you do, then it might be best to try out something that's in season or something that's grown domestically so that you can have that true Japan sushi experience. So today we're going to cover some of the basics as well as some secrets that you might not already know so that you can have the best sushi eating experience when you come to Japan. So if you're planning a trip to Japan, then I'm guessing one of the first things that you're thinking about is your budget. But one of the great things about Japan is that it does have a different type of sushi for each price point. So some of the main ones are budget chains, fish markets, mid-range and omakase, and high-end, which also has omakase. Basically, the sushi chef has decided a particular menu for that day or that week or that season, and that is the omakase course. So obviously the first thing to note is going to be the price, and this is going to be fairly unsurprising, but the budget chain is the cheapest and the high-end one is the most expensive. No surprises there. But then what does change between them all is the quality. So the budget chains are the most likely to have a low quality. You can find some that have a surprisingly high quality, but a lot of them use imported fish so that they can have a standard menu all year round. So that does just affect the texture and the flavor a little bit. But if you go to the fish market, then you'll see that I've put the quality is 3 stars, which is the highest that you can get, because obviously if you go to a fish market, other than you grabbing a fish straight from the sea with your bare hands, then this is going to be the freshest option because it's just been caught. At the mid-range ones, there might be a little less choice than you would get at the super high-end ones, but generally speaking, then they're pretty similar on the level of actual quality of the fish itself. So already you can kind of see that the fish market is a great option if you're just looking for the quality of the food itself. But where the fish market is slightly lacking maybe is in the skills. And so the skills are the knife skills of the sushi chef and the presentation. So obviously if you go to a fish market, they have the knife skills to cut up the entire fish itself, but they're not going to present it in a very fancy way. It's just going to be, there you go, here is your slices of fish. Then it's kind of obvious the mid-range and the high-end ones are going to have higher levels of knife skills and presentation, and everything is going to look absolutely beautiful. And another thing that you'll get from a good sushi chef is that they'll work very closely with the person who's getting the fish, or they'll get it themselves every day, and they'll choose the exact ingredients that are going to go with that and give a well-rounded flavor. Then the next thing is the atmosphere or the ambience. So at the budget chains, it's okay, you know, and if you've never been there before, it might be quite fun. The same for the fish market, there's nothing fancy about it. And then the mid-range and the high-end ones are going to have a much more fancy atmosphere with the hushed tones and the dim lighting and everything that you want for a beautiful sushi experience. So as you can see from this, then the budget chains perform pretty low on all fronts, but they're also really cheap. So if you're not really picky about fish and you just want to experience sushi in Japan, then that's a fairly good option if you're prioritizing your budget. But if you're on a budget and you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, then I would definitely recommend going to a fish market, just because it's a lot more fresh and there's a lot more variety. But the thing is that there's not usually a lot of English, so you kind of just have to guess what you're getting. And then the difference between the mid-range and the high-end ones is really just going to be about the overall experience and the atmosphere. But you're probably wondering where you can go for these different types of sushi. So here are some examples as well that you can go to in Tokyo. For the budget chains, one of the ones that I like is Kura Sushi. It's not the lowest price of all of the budget chains, but it's a pretty good experience, I would say, and we're going to go to the one in Asakusa in a bit. Then for Tokyo, the main fish market is Toyosu. But if you are going to go around Japan, especially if you're going to be around the coast, then I would definitely recommend looking for a fish market that's there, particularly one of the ones in Hokkaido. They are said to be very, very good, and the Hokkaido fish and seafood is generally meant to be some of the best in in Japan. Then for the mid-range one, I would say Manten Sushi Marunouchi. And for the high-end one, I would say Ichibansho Teruya. Because one of the main parts of the experience of sushi in Japan is that you can talk to the chef and you can ask them questions. But most tourists don't really get that opportunity because they don't have a shared language. But at this one, then he speaks English, so you have more of an opportunity to do that. I'm going to share a digital version of this in the description below, and obviously I think a lot of people are going to be mostly interested in the examples, so I'll try and add a few more. But if you are particularly interested in budget sushi in Tokyo, then I would highly recommend you have a look at the video that I did with Tokyo Cheapo, which just looks at all of the best budget places and what to order there. It'll be somewhere on the screen now and also in the description below. And I have these curtains drawn right now because it's just so bright outside, but I'm kind of intrigued as to how hot it actually is, so let's go out and see. The next important thing to know is that seasons have a big impact on sushi. But you don't necessarily need to know how, but I do necessarily need to get out of this heat because it is boiling. Okay, maybe that was a bad idea because I'm already sweaty just from those few minutes outside, so I'm just gonna change. Okay, much better. So what did I mean about the seasons and that you don't really need to know about them? Well, the thing is that in Japan, there are so many different types of fish and they all kind of change with the seasons, and some of them even have 2 different seasons that you can eat them. For example, bonito, which is more fatty in one season and more lean in another season. But the thing is that you don't need to really know that. If you are really into food and really into seafood, then I recommend looking into it a bit. But the thing is that you're going to a place where there are trained experts who have so much experience in all of this that you don't need to know about it. And as I said, at the lower budget places, they tend to have more imported fish so that they can have a standard menu. But what they do is they have specials, which will be seasonal specials. And when you go into the place, they'll be plastered all over the walls and on the menus, so you'll know exactly what is special, what is in season, just from looking and being at the restaurant, so you don't need to know before you get there. And then at the mid-range and higher end places, they take huge pride in the choice of fish that they have, and they take so much effort to be able to get the best fish that is currently in season, or the best fish of the day. And if they can speak English, you can even ask them about that. But if you do go to a place and you're wondering if maybe, oh, I don't know if that one's exactly in season, I don't know what to get, then a good phrase to remember is "Honjitsu no osusume wa nan desu ka?" Honjitsu no osusume wa nan desu ka? And obviously they're going to answer in Japanese, so you need to be prepared for that. And if you're ready to be surprised and you don't mind what it is, then you can say "Sore o kudasai." Sore o kudasai. And that means "I'll have that, please." So it might be a surprise, you might not know what you're going to get, but if you really want the best fish of the day, then that's the way to do it. Coming from the UK myself, I feel like there's not a lot of knowledge about the seasons of fish. A lot of people, including myself before I moved here, would get just things like salmon and tuna and not really know all of the different varieties and things that you can get. So it really blows my mind just how many different things you can get here. So I do recommend going a little bit out of your comfort zone and trying some different things. So feeling at peace knowing that you don't need to be an expert to go and get sushi, then where can you go in Tokyo? Well, Kura Sushi is a classic option, so that's where we're gonna head now. So if it's your first time, what should you try? Well, I would recommend that if you're going somewhere like this or somewhere that's kind of on the cheaper end, then you should get something like tuna, mackerel, or maybe bonito, because they have no surprises. It's kind of a standard texture and a fairly rich flavor. But if you're going somewhere a little bit more fancy, a little bit more upmarket, or where you know that it's going to be very fresh, then I would recommend going a little bit more experimental. So you could try stuff like squid or sea urchin, or maybe even pufferfish, if you dare.
And fugu-tastic.
But just remember that salmon is imported, so it's going to be the same wherever you go. Touchscreens are a pretty normal way to order in chain sushi places. So you can choose your language and change it into English, and then you can switch back to whatever you want, and you can see a description of it in English. My order was heard. And once you've finally ordered your sushi, then there are a few sushi manners to remember. No one's gonna get angry at you if you get them wrong, but in my opinion, it does just make the sushi experience a little better, and it's how sushi is supposed to be eaten, so it's just the recommended way to do it. So the first thing is soy sauce. You're not actually supposed to dip your rice into the soy sauce, partly because your rice is just gonna disintegrate and fall apart, but also because it's just going to overwhelm the flavors of the sushi. So you're actually supposed to just put the soy sauce onto the fish itself, which you can either do by using your fingers to pick up the sushi, which is not rude at all, or you can sort of maneuver the chopstick so that the fish is on the bottom. As long as the fish and the sushi are well put together, then that's okay and it will work. But I personally just like to drip a little bit of this on top of the fish itself. The next thing is wasabi. Well, some places will have little wasabi packets or little bits of wasabi on the side. That's not always the case, because actually in sushi it's usually between the rice and the fish already, and you can choose to have it with wasabi or without wasabi if you don't like wasabi. But it's not actually all that common to put the wasabi into your soy sauce. It's just already in the sushi. And along with the wasabi, there's also the ginger. Ginger is actually meant as a palate cleanser. So I think some of my friends thought that you were supposed to put the ginger on top of the sushi, but it's meant for in between pieces of sushi, particularly very rich pieces of sushi, or right at the end as a palate cleanser. You're not meant to put it on top of it. They're not meant to be eaten together. If you do that, you'll just completely overwhelm the flavor of the fish. And wasabi and soy sauce and other things are all coming around on the belt eventually. You can choose to just take things from the belt as well, but you do have to make sure that that's on your bill at the end. If your order comes up here, and then it comes up here, even the drinks come on the conveyor belt. And also, when you go to a sushi place, especially if it's a small or fancy sushi place, you shouldn't be wearing perfume, because obviously your smell and taste are very linked. So it can cause a bit of a problem for the other customers. They might be a little bit annoyed at you, or even very annoyed at you, if you're wearing overpowering perfume that affects the scents and flavors of the sushi. And so at Kura Sushi, then you put your plates away yourself. You just pop them in here. So now I press the checkout button. So here, then I take this to the register.
That's okay.
But if you want to learn more about these super cheap options that you can get in Tokyo, then I recommend checking out that video that I did with Tokyo Cheapo, which is right here. And congratulations, your first sushi adventure is complete.